the demise of the Black Arrows at the end of 1960, the RAF had to have an aerobatics team to represent the Air Force in 1961. Number 92 Squadron duly obliged with their now blue-painted hunters and called themselves the Blue Diamonds. "16 Blue Hunters carried on the tradition of the Black Arrows for the time being, but the writing was on the wall for the now outdated Hunters, as the frontline fighters of the RAF were the superfast Lightnings. It was not unusual for the Lightnings of 74 Squadron to join in with the Blue Diamonds. In 1962, although the Hunters of the Blue Diamonds were still thrilling the crowds, it was the Lightnings of number 74, the Tigers, who were beginning to take center stage.
Now for the climax of the show. As with wingtips only 4 feet apart, Hunters and Lightnings of 92 and 74 Squadrons Royal Air Force, the Blue Diamonds and the Tigers, start their dazzling display of precision flying. Unerring virtuosity makes the onlooker forget that both these squadrons are fully operational. So they set the seal of perfection on a year of achievement, in which 8 new aircraft have flown at Farnborough.
pilots of number 56 Squadron, Fighter Command, the Firebirds, are providing this year's RAF aerobatic team. Led by Squadron Leader Seward, they're equipped with Lightning's Fighter Command supersonic spearhead. With them on this rehearsal, movie turns Norman Fisher. Following such famous teams as the Black Arrows and the Blue Diamonds, the Firebirds have a very high standard to live up to. Fisher's pictures are proof that they're every bit as good. Here's his impression of what it feels like to be the tail-end Charlie of the formation. They can't afford Charlies up here. Teamwork is everything. Each pilot's life depends on the faultless judgment of his colleagues. The display season opens on Whit Monday with the North Weald Show. It'll reach an early climax at the Paris Air Show, more important than usual this year because there's no Farnborough. The Firebirds, with their spectacular aerial ballet, will be Britain's showpiece.
The RAF realised that the Lightnings were simply too expensive to run, so looked to a cheaper option.
The Royal Air Force Central Flying School at Little Rissington in Gloucestershire, the oldest military flying school in the world, has a pelican on its crest, and Patrick the Pelican is its mascot. In heraldry, this bird signifies learning. The school's job is to train flying instructors from this country and overseas. This year, the Red Pelicans aerobatic team, under the leadership of Flight Lieutenant Terence Lloyd, has been chosen to represent the RAF in all the major air displays in this country and Europe. They'll be flying 6 Jet Provost trainers introduced to the Air Force in 1961. Let's have a look at them through the jet-propelled lens of our cameraman Norman Fisher as he photographs some of their more spectacular manoeuvres. During the first part of the show, the emphasis is on crisp formation flying, and they certainly don't come any crisper. Two aircraft split away from the remainder as part of a further aerobatic sequence. The Red Pelicans have a great tradition behind them. The Central Flying School has been formation flying since 1921. One of the Red Pelicans' newest and most difficult upside-down tricks is mirror flying. One aircraft a precise reflection of the other. This was one of the final rehearsals for the team's first public show on Whit Monday. After the bomb burst, one of the most difficult tricks in the book, landing the jets in formation. P for Pelican, P for precision. Patrick should be proud of them.
The Red Pelicans of the Royal Air Force Central Flying Training School in their Jet Provost Mark IVs lead the aerobatic display, which they share with the Gnats, flown by instructors of number 4 Flying Training School, Royal Air Force Valley.
The Yellowjacks were a 5-aircraft team of Folland Gnats. They were painted yellow, but this created some controversy because onlookers claimed they couldn't quite see the yellow aircraft at times in the sky. So for the following season's work, they repainted the sleek-looking, lovely little Gnats red, and they had a 7 aircraft team. The RAF always said the name was a combination of the Black Arrows and the Red Pelicans, 2 previous teams.
The Red Arrows were initially based at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire and were led by Flight Lieutenant Lee Jones. This first team had 7 of the new Gnat jet trainers. During the 1965 season, the team performed 65 displays in Britain and Europe, and again were awarded the Britannia Trophy by the Royal Aero Club, just as their predecessors, the Black Arrows. In 1965, the newsreel cameras were already looking to the team to equal all the RAF teams before them.
Red Arrows, lined up at the Central Flying School, marked the opening of the 1965 season of aerobatic displays. Flight Lieutenant Lee Jones leads the team, whose members are drawn from Flying Training Command. They'll give performances at many air shows, at home and abroad. In fact, they'll probably steal the show wherever they appear. The team fly Gnat jet-powered aircraft, often reaching near sonic speed in level flight. France will see them at the Paris Air Show. The first public display at home will be at the Biggin Hill International Air Fair. Now for a dress rehearsal.
Meet the RAF's leading aerobatic team for 65, the Red Arrows. A team of 2-seater Gnats, the standard jet trainers used by the Royal Air Force. They're flown by pilots from the Central Flying School in Gloucestershire. Let's watch them as they give us a foretaste of the program they'll be putting on at various displays throughout the summer.
Now hold your breath and wait for the ace daredevils of the air, the Red Arrows. There's £1 million worth of ironmongery tearing the sky apart at 350 miles an hour. This is the official aerobatic team from the Royal Air Force's Central Flying School. They're Gnat aircraft, sometimes 3 foot apart, sometimes with wingtips overlapping. This is the circus act that needs the whole canvas of the sky as its big top. They can plummet from 4,000 feet to 400 in screaming seconds. They weave from arrow formation on a loop into a half swan or a pattern they call King's Cross. Just keep your eye on the altimeter as these high flyers scroll their fame over the upper air. 25 years ago, this same slice of air was alive with Spitfires and Hurricanes in combat with Messerschmitts. The brave tradition has been handed on.
Then, the following year, Squadron Leader Ray Hanna, a marvellous soft-spoken New Zealander, increased the team to 9 aircraft.
But for the public at large, the main thing at Farnborough is the flying. And the show ends with a superb demonstration of aeronautical skill by the Red Arrows, the Royal Air Force aerobatic team in their Hawker Siddeley Gnat jets.
And they created the Diamond 9 formation, and the Diamond 9 formation remains the official logo and, yes, insignia of the Red Arrows today.
Members of the RAF freefall parachute team have a very high standard of accuracy. But for precision flying, there's no one to top the world-famous Red Arrows, who provided the exciting climax to a show which clearly demonstrated the high standard of British pilots and their planes to another nation. Embodies the spirit of adventure, daring and advancement of the Farnborough Air Display, like the RAF's great aerobatic team, the Red Arrow.
It was during this period of the formation of the Red Arrows that I and my business partner, Arthur Gibson, were given the opportunity to make a short cinema film about the team. And we went to RAF Kemble in Gloucestershire to film them. What then happened was a filmmaker's nightmare in a way. We were only given 2 days to film them as they worked up for future displays. And of course it rained for 2 days, rained solidly. But we got on with it anyway. The best thing about the whole thing was obviously flying with them. I'd flown fast jets before, but nothing prepared me for the Red Arrows, nothing at all. But I was with Ray Hanna. I was sitting behind Ray. And when it came to the flick rolls, the quick turns, unfortunately I threw up on the first time this happened, with the first sortie. Anyway, we got back down again, and he said, have some orange juice, some water. We're going back up again in half an hour, and we did. We found it very difficult to film in a way because for the cinema you had to have big 35mm cameras, but which we couldn't get into the airplane. They just wouldn't fit in, so we had to use small 16mm cameras. And we realized because of the G-forces, sometimes pulling 8 or something like that, again with the twizzles, they jammed. So we just had to devise a way of winding them up to full winding power and letting them roll, and as with the airplanes. For the music, I rang Brian Bennett, who was the drummer of the Shadows, probably the most popular group at the time, one of them, apart from the Beatles, of course. He said he'd do the music. He wanted to see the film, so I showed him the film. And he saw it and did this track, which is mostly drumming, which added the pace and the suspense that I wanted to the film.
Red Arrows, taxi. Red, clear to taxi, runway 27, QFE 1013.
Up to 90, rolling, go.
again, I found that listening to Ray in front, the physical aspect of filming them became better because you had to wait for the rolling go, and your mind just equipped itself for the word go, and with that went the physical pressure and probably the emotional pressure too. But it was a hell of an experience, a really incredible experience.
Rolling out, leader's benefit, go. Break, go. Open up and relax.
best thing that happened to it. It was chosen as the cinema short for the Royal Film Command performance of that year, 1969.
Stornoway Harbour, the summer of 1970. A party of trippers on a fishing expedition. But these trippers are different. These men are the core of a small elite group. They call themselves the Red Arrows.
I don't know whether elite's quite the right word. The thing is that we're doing a very specialised job, even within the Air Force, very specialised in everyday terms.
Peter McIntosh, team manager.
The techniques involved professionally and the way we operate and the way that affects our social life means that we're in a very, very closed environment, which is physically difficult for other people to even understand. So this tends to cut us off a bit and make us even more a small group, rather obviously so.
Yesterday they were in North Devon. Tomorrow they'll be in Iceland. 2 days later they might be back here again, and yet again they might not. The only certainty in their lives is that of uncertainty. They live in a world which in some ways is as unreal and unusual to us as that of the squid.
Squid? A squid? Hey, squid tastes good, don't they? What does squid taste like?
There's a certain amount of kudos in flying, as they might put it, these sharp-looking aeroplanes around Europe. The Red Arrows are regarded with a well-earned respect by the professional flyer. They're acknowledged as one of the best aerobatic teams in the world. They have a very good aircraft, the Hawker-Siddeley Gnat T.1. They have the complete unflappability and gentle arrogance that comes from rigorous training and an unswerving devotion to the business of flying aerobatics. Loop, roll, wing over, crossover, cascade, diamond 9, wine glass roll. Their jargon to describe what they're doing. They'll tell you that really it is very routine, that you'd be surprised at how very prudent they are, of how little chance there is of anything going wrong. Dickie Duckett, 28, flies number 7. He's one of the solo pilots. It's a team joke that whenever a camera appears, he somehow manages to find himself center stage facing the press. John Haddock on the left, 27, flies number 5, joined the team in 1969. Ian Dick on the right, number 6, the other solo pilot. Doug Smith, number 3. Douglas Marr, number 8, on the far right, has been with them since '69. New Zealander Ewan Perrow, number 2. They're all qualified flying instructors, earning no more than any other similar officer who flies in the Air Force. The team's responsibility is to follow exactly the moves of the boss, Dennis Hazel. Dennis Hazel has the responsibility of not only leading the flying, but also taking many decisions before they even get into the air. Whether or not to fly their full display, at which point on the airfield the display is to be aimed, how low and how high the display is to go.
See, this is an indication of the pressure from the...
Bill Loverseed on the left was one of the founder members of the team in 1965 and rejoined them again in October '69. George White is the engineer officer. Squadron leader John Rust is the team navigator, as well as flying at number 4. They seem like the epitome of the schoolboy heroes of a generation ago. And each one of them must know that when their 3-year stay with the Red Arrows is up, life can never be quite the same again. The displays in front of the public are preceded by long winter months of training. There are 9 basic formations which go to make up the 17-minute long display. From the takeoff, it's Dennis Hazel in the number 1 leading position who gives the instructions to change from one formation to another, to make blue, red or white smoke. The rest of the team obey his instructions to the letter. The display is flown with each pilot keeping in position visually, as John Haddock explains.
I'm aware of what is happening in the formation because we've done it so many times, and you're aware of minute changes, but I never see the ground except a fleeting pass as we happen to roll through it. The thing I'm sure people don't realize is that I look at nothing else, or anybody in the team looks at nothing else than the aircraft next door to them, or perhaps, as I was talking about earlier, the leader, if you can see him. So you never actually look where you're going.
In a season, the team might go to Finland, Italy, Sweden, Holland, Monaco, Malta and Iceland. It sounds like a grand life.
People see us going across to very glamorous sort of places, and they think, oh, it's marvellous, they're off to Italy for 3 or 4 days, but in fact it's not so glamorous because a day is spent transiting out there. That evening is spent preparing the aircraft, removing the external fuel tank.
Engineer George White.
The next day you fly on a display, and the next day you fly home. So that was Italy.
Doing formation aerobatics, I'm basically doing all the manoeuvres into a set pattern, merely making allowances to hold the display in the right place. The chaps in the formation, they're not all looking at me, but they are looking at men that are looking at me. So it's really just looking through other aircraft to myself, or looking at other aircraft which are formating on me.
To many, the responsibilities of the leader, Dennis Hazel, seem frightening. How do they weigh on him?
Not too heavily, because to start with, it's obviously a change doing aerobatics with 8 other airplanes hanging onto you, and you think about them. But as time goes on, you gain more practice, you get not to worry about them. You know they're going to hang on to you. All you've got to do is to fly the display. There's obviously a certain element of risk with airplanes flying that close together, but as long as there's no technical failure, we've trained for so long before we go on public display that on a public display I would say the danger is minimal. The last display of the season will be somewhere around mid-October. We'll then get a fortnight's leave, and then we'll have 5 aeroplanes to train with, and we'll fly those 5 aeroplanes probably 4 times a day until February, when we'll be going up to 9 again. Then we'll carry on flying those 3 times a day until April, and then we'll be just about ready.
Even given this sort of training, this is a life fit only for the dedicated specialists. What sort of a man fits the bill?
We accept the fact that above average flying ability is required, so the initial list is cut down to those with above average flying ability. From that list, we then select the men we want on the grounds of motivation and compatibility. The chap we're looking for must only want to do formation aerobatics. If he has volunteered for this as just another job, he's not the chap we're looking for. We want somebody that wants to do this and do this only at this time of his life. It's a very light airplane, a fairly powerful engine, and we can keep the airplane within the airfield circuit throughout the whole display, which is what we're trying to do. Whereas the Italian airplane, for instance, is quite a bit heavier and bigger, uses up much more airspace.
On the team, there's an awful amount of practice waiting goes on. I use the term practice waiting. It's almost a way of life. Weather controls our operations. It affects the show when we fly it, affects us getting to shows, affects us getting back again, affects us in practice, and usually pours the rain on our days off just to complete the picture.
It didn't pour with rain this time, but this practice waiting Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides was of the fairly long variety. The ground crew are all volunteers. Not for them the trade union hours, the overtime, the extended tea break. To the outsider, they seem to work almost too hard, sometimes 15 or 16 hours a day. But they fly far more than the average ground crew and enjoy themselves into the bargain. Each of these aircraft is worth £150,000, and they get the sort of attention that such valuable pieces of flying machinery deserve.
Most people imagine that we're a pretty large organisation. We have 9 airplanes on display, for instance, so people think we've probably got about twice that number. In fact, we've got 10, so our engineers have to work very hard. I think most people would imagine we have a very large administrative organisation. I'm the person that does the administration when we're away. Back at base, we have a team adjutant, Len Ludlow, our team adjutant, with 1 typist. And that's it on the administrative side.
To put this trip in its context, what we're trying to do is to go from Stornoway here on the Isle of Lewis by the most direct route, which is a straight line for us, to Keflavik here in Iceland. The trip is about 580 miles long, and we normally have a range of about 600 miles, so you can see what our margin is there. Perhaps the only unique feature of this trip is that whilst we've been over stretches of water of this distance before, none of that water's been quite so cold. So we've taken a small precaution and put a Shackleton at about our critical point here.
The point of all the safety precautions was brought home on the return leg of the trip from Iceland. Right on the point of the no-return line, the air pressure in number 8 Douglas Mars aircraft went wrong. The air pressure forces the fuel into the engine. Nearly half the remaining fuel in his aircraft suddenly became unobtainable. He and Vil Loverseed were ordered to return to Keflavik here in Iceland. To listen to the conversation, you would think they'd just had a puncture on a quiet road one Sunday afternoon. not a full-scale alert over one of the bleakest bits of ocean in the world, and 300-odd miles from the nearest land.
Another 5 minutes and it wouldn't have made a scrap.
Yeah, I had the FPR failure line in my map and I thought, 400 pounds, 350. Well, I had 800 when I landed. By the time the FPR came back on. But I would have had about 450.
They will tell you that if anything does go wrong with them or their aircraft, it happens during training. Training takes place at their base at Kemble in Gloucestershire. In November 1970, Dennis Hazel was forced to eject from his aircraft when the engine burst into flames. A year earlier, a similar experience befell John Rust.
I was faced with a fairly catastrophic emergency in that I had all the warnings on in the cockpit whilst we were on top of a loop. One has no doubt when this sort of thing happens. For instance, I lost control of the aeroplane. I could no longer control the aeroplane. And the only answer then is to eject. There was no doubt I had to get out, and fast. I was pretty terrified at the point of ejection because the smoke was so dense that I couldn't see out of the cockpit. And I was pretty frightened by the actual ejection because I couldn't quite tell what was going on. But then there's a sudden snapping and I looked up and I was sitting on the end of a parachute, which was very gratifying. That's all there was to it.
The most daredevil part of the display, the bit that looks dangerous to people on the ground, comes with the solos flown by Richard Duckett in number 7 and Ian Dick in number 6. How do they plan these manoeuvres?
Well, obviously, we have to try and get it in the middle of the airfield. If that's Datum there, and this is the runway, we try and put all our crosses in front of Datum here. To do this, we fly a pattern behind the crowd, which can't be seen, a right angular pattern like that. I call this, and I call turning in here, and we turn in, I turn in this way, and Dickie, this end, turns in as well. We match speeds, rate of turn, everything, and obviously, as you can see, as I've drawn, all being equal, we cross in the middle of Datum. If there's a wind, obviously Dickie is going to be covering the ground faster, approaching me more quickly, so he's got to make an allowance, and he makes it here, and it's very simple. For every 5 knots of wind, he allows a second, so he tracks a second longer into wind after I've called turning.
Well, basically, if I enlarge the runway here, make this one side of the runway and that the other side with the center line here, we pick one side of the runway each. Okay, so Ian would fly down the right-hand side and I'd fly down the left-hand side, so we've immediately got some separation.
I think it was one of the solo pilots previous to Dickie and myself who likened it to driving a car, the hazard of crossing or passing one another. When you think that, millions of times in one day, 2 cars can be going round a bend on an open road, travelling at anything up to 70 miles an hour, how far apart are they when they pass? 2 or 3 feet. And you don't know the other bloke in the car.
If one's going to be a pilot and it's something one really wants to do, this gives you a very good opportunity to express yourself in flying. You're allowed to fly to limits of the aircraft and your own limits in this job, which just doesn't happen in any other job, really.
famous Red Arrows of the Royal Air Force. A breathtaking climax to the latest exhibition of the British aerospace industry.
As we've heard, aerobatics can be a dangerous occupation. And even with the very high standard of the Red Arrows in their Gnats, there were inevitably accidents. In March 1969, Gnat X-Ray Romeo 573 ended up in the trees surrounding RAF Kemble. In 1970, team leader, squadron leader Dennis Hazel had an engine failure practicing the twinkle roll and had to eject when the Kemble runway was blocked by 2 Gnats from RAF Valley. He broke his thigh and was immediately replaced by squadron leader Bill Loverseed. Early in 1971, the synchro pair with new pilots in the rear seats somehow collided over Kemble. All 4 were unfortunately killed.
The whole idea was, of course, to enhance the reputation of the RAF and to aid recruitment and obviously just get people involved with the whole flying process.
In spite of these very harrowing problems, the work of the Red Arrows continued to thrill the crowds everywhere they went. But there was always the dilemma for the Air Ministry of how long the team could be supported.
The only positive things I know is that the team were lifed originally to the end of '74. The future of this team at this time was considered, and it has been decided to go ahead with it, and that's the reason we're on display now. So I take it, and I'm quite sure I'm right in taking it, that the Red Arrows as a team will be going for at least the next 4 seasons.
How right he was.
And again the skill of the formation flyers, this time the Royal Air Force's Red Arrows. And yet, times have changed. It may be fun to have 9 jets roaring over your head at an air show, but it loses its glamour if you live in the shadow of an airport. The precision of a world-famous aerobatic team, the skill and courage of individual pilots, their planes whirling and twisting in the sky. For the general public, that is what an air show is all about. Spectacle, excitement, suspense. And as it moves through its 25th air show, Farnborough International 74 has undoubtedly been providing just that. The show underlined the phenomenal cost of new technology and the urgent need for rationalization and greater international cooperation. So it was scarcely a surprise when all the major European manufacturers announced a plan to collaborate on meeting airline needs for the 1980s. The logic was inescapable. It was a fitting end to Farnborough's first international air show, and left a feeling of optimism. For in spite of the difficulties, aerospace remains a growth industry.
For the Royal Air Force's famous Red Arrows, an anniversary touchdown. For 10 years, they've been acclaimed the finest aerobatic team in the world. By the time RAF Meteors took the aerial stage in 1950, the war had accelerated technology. Propellers were on the way up. Now it was the whistling jet. But 9 years later, aerobatics as a serious scientific pursuit took shape with the coming of the Black Arrows team of Hawker hunters. Aerial display continued to be the province of the Royal Air Force, as it remains today. But aerobatics were by now tuned to jet speeds and jet maneuverability. The display is sophisticated, like bomb burst. The English Electric Lightnings of the Firebirds, another successful display team of 1963. The birth of the Red Arrows was getting closer. Then in April 1965, the Red Arrows, the RAF's first full-time display team, was born. To the uninitiated, the controls of the Hawker Siddeley Gnat look bewildering. This is the plane they picked. Even pre-flight drill is perfect. Up to this moment, there had been many other RAF aerobatic teams, but the personnel were drawn from operational squadrons. The serious business of defense came first. Aerobatics and fun flying was very much a secondary role. But from April '65, the Red Arrow's sole task was to learn, perfect, and present display flying. The aircraft for the job were as carefully chosen as the men who were to fly them. The Hawker Siddeley Gnat was considered and proved to be ideal. It has carried the Red Arrows to better and more intricate performances year by year in every sky throughout the world. The Red Arrows year begins with 5 months solid rehearsal before the first display. As they take a turn over Blackpool Sands and round the familiar tower, the Red Arrows slip smoothly into one of their most popular formations, Super Concorde. Then the Vigan formation. Precision in the tight routines comes with perfect teamwork and practice. Here, follow my leader is literally the clue to success. 8 Red Arrows follow squadron leader Dickie Duckett's lead plane as if it were their own, their aircraft an extension of his. And a good old-fashioned loop. Don't watch the planes, watch the horizon. A formation they called Diamond 9. rate of climb is a scorching 165 feet a second. Screaming in low over the airfield, that's precision flying of the highest order. The almost feline grace of these machines alone is exciting. Powered by a Bristol Siddeley Orpheus turbojet, the Gnat has been a faithful and dependable friend of these knights of the air for every moment of their 10 years of triumph. Display flying has come a long way since the rickety days of a wing and a press, and it obviously has more exciting horizons to conquer. Here's wishing the Red Arrows, those 9 magnificent young men and the ground crew who keep them flying, another successful decade of breathtaking aerobatics.